Welcome to Color Me Home, a podcast about paint
and decorating
and home improvement
and creative projects
and pretty much whatever else comes up in the conversation. I'm Dan.
And I'm Betsy. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're excited to share an interview we recorded last week with Dave and Dan Altena, the second and third generation of RepcoLite presidents.
Now, 2016 is RepcoLite's 70th anniversary, and we thought it was the perfect opportunity to sit down with Dave and Dan and talk about the history of RepcoLite. You know, how it started, what it's like to build a successful multi-store operation from the ground up, and that one question that everybody really wants to know, what in the world does RepcoLite even mean? We did all of that last week, and now we're excited to air the interview. But before we do that, let's start with some introductions.
Right. Dan Altena is the current president of RepcoLite Paints and has been in that position for the past 9 years. Prior to that, Dan worked as CEO, doing pretty much anything that needed to be done.
Dave Altena is Dan's father, and he served as the company president for nearly 26 years until he retired in 2008. Before that, his father Ben was the president, and Dave ran around doing everything that needed to be done. Now, as you'll hear in the interview, he's basically been involved with the company since he was 9 years old. Now, all right, that's enough introductory stuff. Let's get to the interview. Thanks, both of you, for taking time out of your schedules to be here with us today.
Now, I know that the beginnings of RepcoLite go back to the basement of a chicken hatchery. I think that's probably a pretty good place to start. Could you fill us in a little bit on how the company began and how that chicken hatchery played into this whole story?
Sure. There was a man by the name of Jake Russellman who worked for a company in Holland called Holland Color and Chemical, which was located on the north side on Howard Avenue. Okay. And as a part-time sort of a hobby type of a job, he began making paint. He looked for a place to make it, and just so happened his dad had a basement of a hatchery empty. And so he moved some old equipment down into that basement, and he made a few gallons of paint now and then.
So as a hobby, he just kind of started
It was a hobby. It was kind of a sideline business. A lot of people do that kind of thing. You may like to grow flowers as a sideline or something like that. He wanted to make paint. And he had a chemical background, having worked for Holland Color and Chemical. So he knew a little bit about what was going on, okay? So that's basically how it started. And there was another guy, Ben Altena, who had a barbershop on Washington Square. Barbershop, beauty shop combination. Very successful business. He was doing very, very well. But he just really sort of got tired of that business. He didn't have anything to do with the beauty shop, of course, obviously. And so he was pretty much stuck behind a barber chair. A lot of times 10, 12 hours a day.
10, 12 hours a day?
Yeah. That's a lot of standing.
I had a little back trouble that went along with that and just was looking for something else. And I'm sure that before they made a change, he and my mom prayed a lot about this, and how I never did understand or know exactly how he got together with Jake Russellman.
Okay, so that part, you're not
sure.
That
part is
happened.
A little foggy in my mind. But they knew each other. Okay, but back in those days, Holland was a small town. You knew just about everybody. He might have been he probably was a customer of my dad's in the barber shop. And so they got to talking and looking for something else. Why my father picked this has always been a mystery to me, because this was a nothing business at that time.
Paint, just the
No. The Russellman paint manufacturing company. It was
just
a couple
gallons
nothing.
In a chicken hatchery basement.
Yeah. Here you are, we're in a chicken coop trying to make paint, and it just wasn't. It wasn't anything to say, wow, this has got real potential.
Right.
Somehow or other, my dad saw potential in this, and so he joined together with Jake, and they made paint in the hatchery for, I guess, about a year, and then moved to the present location on 17th Street.
Okay. Wow. So, how old were you when this started?
I was probably 8, 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. And they put me to work as a salesman. You always see these little kids on TV selling stuff,
Well, little kids sell it best.
Did they make a jingle and you got to sing the jingle?
Yeah, no.
Awesome.
No, I was very young. Okay.
So, do you remember, the anxiety of, that's a huge shift, like you're saying, to go from something that's an established business.
My dad never let that anxiety show at all.
Okay,
nor did my mother, I think.
My children see anxiety all the time.
they were confident in what they were doing. I have to hand it to my dad. My dad had an 8th grade education. He knew what he knew from what he had learned by experience. And the same thing was true in the paint business, He knew nothing about paint, absolutely nothing. But he was a terrific student, and so he learned. He learned quickly, okay? So after they moved, this was right after the Second World War, okay? And
When they moved to the new building.
when he joined with Jake.
Okay.
In 46, 47. The military supply chain had not yet switched over effectively to a civilian supply chain for lots of materials, not only materials for the paint business, but materials for just about everything, for building and all that kind of stuff, foodstuffs, that sort of thing. So materials to make paint were extremely scarce. They were very, very scarce. I can remember my dad getting in his car, driving to Chicago for 3 bags of pigment.
Really?
Holy
3 bags
smokes.
of pigment, which would have probably made 1 or 2 batches of paint.
In a batch being how many gallons?
25, 30 gallons.
25, 30 gallons.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
And he did that multiple times. He'd be on the phone talking to people, scouting all over, trying to get a bag or 2 of pigment here or there, trying to get 5 or 10 gallons of linseed oil.
Okay.
Now that eased up rather quickly after that. And because of the war, a lot of new and different raw materials came into the paint business scene. And then there was that opportunity. We were in a transition period between the time when, in the 30s and so, when painters made their own paint. They came on a job
They
with
made their own paint?
They came on a job with linseed oil, white lead, maybe a zinc oxide powder or something like that, and they sat there and they mixed it up themselves on the job, right? And this period of during the war and right after the war was a transition between make it on the job and make it before the job. In other words, the painter now walked on the job with 2 gallons of paint in his hand,
Right.
made by a company. So there was a whole time of transition, which had to make it that much more difficult.
Well, but like because Reselman, when he started then, was starting to produce paint for people when they're still making it on the job site, right? That was what was going on.
So he had been at this, I think, for probably 5-6 years, maybe even just before the war. But like I said,
really,
it was a hobby, sort
yeah,
of.
okay, as a hobby. That's right.
Yeah. He would get it when he could get some raw materials. He would make some paint, and of course, he was in position to get this, working for Holland Color and Chemical. They had a line on some of this stuff, so it was interesting transition time.
Yeah.
So
Now-
how many gallons did they start out making? I mean,
Well, they would make 25, 30 gallons of paint during a day. Okay, in those days, the paint manufacturing business was very, very time and machine intense. You loaded the pigments and the oils into a drum-like machine that had stones in it. Okay, you turned it on, and those stones basically beat the pigment into the oils, and that's how you made paint. And you thinned it down with some turpentine, and unloaded the barrel. Okay, unloaded the barrel, and you put it in. I can even remember that after the war, there were no tin cans. We were using cardboard cans.
Cardboard can.
Cardboard
didn't leak?
cans. No, they didn't, because there was no water involved. Okay, it was always
okay.
it was all oil-based stuff.
Okay.
And that did not degrade the cardboard. It was a special. It must have been treated or something.
Right,
But anyhow,
right.
we used cardboard cans. So my dad would take this paint that came out of this old stone mill or pebble mill,
Yeah.
put it in the back of his car at night, and go from door to door to the painters peddling it. White only. The painters made the colors on the job.
So they
Right.
tinted everything
They
there.
tinted everything on the job, right? So all he did is he had 25, 30 gallons of white paint, and he would go from door to door with the painters, drop off 4 gallons, 5 gallons here, maybe 10 gallons if he really had a good customer. And
How do he have like now, we have all we can do to control our delivery system with cell phones and, all of these abilities. How in the world?
well, when you got 10 customers, it's not hard.
Okay. There you go. So it's just a standard route that he ran?
Yeah. And
then
then,
they would
once
place the
once they
orders?
moved over to 17th Street here,
Yeah.
they could make more paint. They bought
it
some
gets
new
more
equipment. They
complicated.
bought a bigger pebble mill.
Okay.
And they could make more paint. So now it expanded. Now we left Holland and we went to Saugatuck and Douglas. We went to South Haven. We
With
went
the
to Grand Haven.
same system of
The
delivery?
same system. My dad would go, but he
Seriously?
would go, maybe on Monday night he would go to Grand Haven. On Wednesday night he would go to Saugatuck and Douglas. And maybe on Thursday night he would go to South Haven. But he had this regular route, and then in the meantime he would try to develop customers. That's why I say he was he was a hardworking guy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just content to make 25 gallons of paint a day. It had to grow.
So he would work still during the day at that
Oh
point,
yeah.
and then
oh,
now
yeah.
he's driving
Do it
much further to do all of this
I,
stuff.
when I was young, I saw very little of my dad.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and he apologized to me about that many, many times. But he was building a business.
You know, that's the
You
thing.
know,
There's
and-
sacrifices you
and
have
that
to
sacrifice bore tremendous blessings for the rest of the family.
make. Right.
So
Do you remember any of that, Dan, or was that before you were around?
That was before my time.
he was a gleam in his mother's eye.
What would you, I mean, like the quality of the paint they were producing, the consistency of it. You know, what was that like with?
It was early on. It was very inconsistent because you didn't know what raw materials you were going to have. So what you did is you flew by the seat of your pants as to what that formula looked like. You
right.
tried to make it as consistent as possible, but everybody had that same
Right.
problem. Everybody was dealing with stuff that was inconsistent. So the big thing, as the business progressed, was to be able to make reproducible quality products, and that came along when raw materials became more available and when raw materials got better.
Okay.
And that was, again,
Then the
part of this
consistency.
transition. They continued to get better and better and better because now science could look at the consumer market rather than just at the war effort.
Right.
Right.
So we have to be, you know, let's go to like 50s, something around that
Okay,
time.
sure.
You guys, it's still Reselman Paint. Was it Reselman Paint Manufacturing Company?
Reselman Paint Manufacturing Company
Manufacturing
up
Company.
until 1960.
Up until 1960.
Right,
So how did that come about, the change from Reselman to RepcoLite?
Well, what happened is in 1960 we actually incorporated. Up until
Okay.
that point, it was a partnership. Okay, and Jake Reselman left in the 50s. His wife had some health problems, so they went down to live in New Mexico. And so then Frederick Schur came in as a partner with my dad. And then in 1960, they incorporated. And during the time of the incorporation, of course, they dropped the name because Jake Reselman was no longer around. And so they went to RepcoLite.
Okay.
Now, that's a whole different story, a whole
I'd
nother
certainly
story.
like to know about that story.
That's what everyone asks when they
You
come
know,
in the
there's
store.
only one way you're going to find out the real answer to that story is to talk to Ben.
Well, that's going to be complicated.
It's going to be complicated.
There are, complications to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do what we
You
can.
it may happen sometime along the line, but it's a few years off. Let's put it that way.
All right.
But I think that basically it is a shortening of Reselman Paint Manufacturing Company. It's Repco Reselman Paint Company.
Okay,
Okay,
Repco.
Okay.
that part of it. And there was, every age seems to have its buzzword. Well, light was the buzzword at that time. You was light this, light beer, light that, light this, So light
You just
became
tacked light on?
You tacked the light on, exactly.
The example I give on that is, an early form of plastic is Bakelite plastic. This is about in this time frame. And it has a connotation of high tech and, exciting new technology. And I think that's kind of where that light comes from.
Okay.
Kind of meaningless, actually. But
It'd be the equivalent of putting an I in front of a word.
Right, nowadays.
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, right. Yep.
That is one of the things that, I'm assuming you guys were asked that from the very beginning.
I wish I had a nickel for every time that question was asked.
I just wish that people
I
would
wouldn't be
ask
sitting
me
here now. I'd be in Hawaii or something. I can't tell you how often I thought about. I lay awake at night and think, should we change that name?
Still you do?
Not anymore.
Not
Oh,
anymore.
no.
We've talked
that's
about
his
it.
Oh,
problem.
yeah, we've
That's
talked
his
about
problem.
it.
Yeah, I think that's been talked about ever since 1960. Ever since the first day that name came up. I think it's been talked about, should we change that name and what should we change it to, I did not want to tack my name to the thing.
Okay.
But,
How come?
Which is what most paint companies
yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah.
talk about Benjamin Moore and all this kind of stuff, I assume that Benjamin Moore was actually a real guy at some point in time.
Right.
But a lot of times the name is tacked to it, and I didn't really want to do that.
How come?
I don't know. I'm a modest guy. But I couldn't come up with anything.
Well-
and besides, the deeper you get into this, the more entrenched it becomes,
Yep.
the harder it is to change.
Very much
Look
so.
at some of these companies that have tried to change their name and sometimes lost their identity.
Right.
Right.
No, we went through that. Was it a couple years ago?
Yeah.
That was the most serious that I was a part
Contemplation
of.
of
yeah.
this.
And it sounds like a really good idea because there's so many cool things until we get that blank piece of paper out and I have no idea what to put down there.
Yeah.
Right.
How about Midwest paint? Oh, that's so boring.
Yeah, it's nothing generic and nothing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so you stick with what you got. I think Altena probably wouldn't be that great of a name anyway because it has the same.
What is
that?
that?
Right.
What is that? Right.
We had
it's
the
not
great
a common
name.
name.
At one time.
yeah.
We had the great name Dutch Mill.
That's what I would like to know about that. Because that really was good.
That
being
was
in
a,
Holland.
that was a great
Right.
name until the big boys came along and said, "You may use that."
Now, who
word
are the big
because
boys?
You don't want me to say that, do you?
You can say
Dutch
that.
boy.
Dutch boy paints.
Yeah, they came along and said, "No, it's got Dutch in it. You can't use it." I mean,
It
can't
was
be.
because of, okay.
And there just so happened there was another a paint company that had Dutch in it.
Did they go
And
after them too?
No, they could continue to use it. I think my dad caved, to be honest with you.
Oh, he kind of bluffed it
I
maybe.
think I think he could have fought that one, but the legal advice at that time was, no, you're gonna catch it. You better change it. But that was a good name.
That was a good name.
That's a
We've
good
got
name.
old
Old cans with
coasters
that
and
on.
all of that.
Sure.
So Dutch boy came and stole that.
Yeah, it was a shame.
At least you're not bitter about it.
No,
You can unclench that pen right now. No, that's cool. No, that's one of my favorite stories because I've heard that before. The rumblings of that.
yeah.
Because
There's only one way we could solve that problem.
do we have to talk to Ben again?
No.
Betsy,
No,
make a list.
we can go out and buy Dutch boy.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
make them change their name.
Exactly.
Now, all right, now let's shift to a topic that I think is pretty interesting. RepcoLite's been producing paint for 70 years. 70 years.
It's a long time.
It is a long time.
In this business, unless you're a giant company, that seems like a long time to
Tremendously long
Even the
time.
giants have come and gone.
So what's changed? How has the whole paint world changed over those 70 years? I mean, we talked about a little bit of it, but you guys have been on
Well,
the inside.
The biggest change, as far as the product was concerned, I mean, there's been, and Dan can speak to this, a lot of changes in marketing, and the market itself has changed considerably over the years, particularly for a company like ours. But the big change as far as products is concerned is a change from oil-based to latex. Mm-hmm. That was a dynamic change. It really was. It opened up technologies that have just made paint an easy to use, anybody can do it type of a product, and which was not the case when we were talking about the oil-based stuff.
What was it like? I mean, was that oil-based similar to what we've got, what we consider oil-based now?
No, that evolved over the years a lot too.
So
It
what was the
changed a
old
lot.
oil-based like?
Well, it was basically oil and pigment, and early on it was white lead, zinc oxide.
That's the healthy lead, the white lead, the black
Yeah,
lead.
that's the
you
kind you
don't
want to eat.
That is a kind of a dark spot in the industry's history, but there was no alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
There was,
Well, and they weren't aware of
alternative.
of health problems.
Right.
At
Well,
that point, right?
they may have been, but it didn't. There wasn't the awareness and the sense of awareness that there is today.
Well, and I would say there was also not an alternative. Titanium dioxide didn't really come around until after World War II to replace the whiteness that white lead gave paint. So that was a major technological advance that helped make paint safer. I would say, along with that shift to latex paint, over the years we've seen a shift from painting used to be done by professionals. When it started getting easier with the advent of water-based paint and the invention of the roller, now homeowners can do their own painting, and so there was a major shift to consumer painting your own projects.
What time period are we talking?
I would say that really accelerated in probably the 60s and
Yeah, it
70s.
did.
So prior to that, a lot of it was
It
professional.
was professionals, yeah. It was all stinky stuff and, hard to clean up and something
It was the unusual homeowner that took on his own painting projects, and so consequently there was lots of painters around.
So when homeowners started painting their own houses, how did that change how much paint was manufactured? Did it up it considerably, or just, it was such a slow growth that you really didn't see it?
The paint business is a slow growth business, but the advent of latex paint put a lot of steam behind it because it opened up a whole new market. you were able to decorate a room once every 3 years, whereas you
Right.
might have decorated it once or twice in your lifetime. You know, might have painted it. It really made a seismic change, I think, in the way people approached paint. You know, it had a lousy reputation before that because it was hard to use and it smelled. It smelled bad. You know, the latex paints didn't have a great smell, but they sure were a lot better and so much easier to put on. And then the second largest change, and this was almost, I think, Dan, you would agree with me, almost as big, was the advent of the color tinting machine.
That was going to be my next question. I was
sure,
just going to ask
Betsy.
the decorator in me wants to know when the color shift happened, when people could pick from hundreds of colors.
That came in the 60s as well. Okay? Yeah, they came
And I
in
bet
the
they were
60s.
really cool colors in the 60s.
Well, you had yeah, they were, I guess, you know. I'm still wearing some.
But yeah, then back then you would do everything by eye, and to reproduce something a second time was very difficult. It was just kind of a splash of this and a dash of that.
We had cans and cans of colorant, okay? And you'd take a teaspoon of this and throw it in and hope that did it. If it didn't, you threw another teaspoon in. And so you kind of tried to write down how much you had put in there, but it was never accurate until the tinting machines came along. If you wanted 10 gallons of paint back in the old days, tinted to let's just say a gray or a beige or something like that, we took those 10 gallons, we emptied them into a pot, put them under a stirring machine, and then tinted the 10 gallons and put them back into the cans
Oh,
again.
really?
Yes, that's the way it was
And the
done.
customer came back 2.5
Because
weeks later.
and wanted one more. Yeah, because you had no standard of measurement.
Wow.
That's what the tinting machine did. It gave you an ounce of colorant. That was beautiful.
So do you remember? Or that's before
Well,
you
it
yet.
was, tinting machines were already in use by the time I
Right.
started. But the people that I worked with back then remembered doing it all the hard way.
Right.
Now, another thing I'll add on to that, even beyond that, that has really changed the way consumers look at paint is the color matching computer. That has totally changed the way the people look at design and decorating. Instead of going to a chip rack or a list of colors, they have an unlimited choice now, and they can have something made for them in a matter of 10 minutes that's exactly the right color.
Right.
And that's really opened up a lot of opportunities for possibilities for people to become creative, and it's evident. When I started in the late 70s, we would make plant batches of standard colors, and we would sell, hundreds of gallons on a weekend of neutral. Neutral was the big color back then.
Yep.
And once the color matching computer came into existence in the mid 80s, I would say, all of a sudden those standard colors went away, and it didn't take very long to get to where we are now, which is everyone wants something special and unique now. Taking something off the shelf is just not.
That's so
doesn't
boring.
cut it, right?
That's so
Yeah.
80s.
Everyone else has
It's like
that color.
everybody else, right? It's like the last thing you want to do is go into Pottery Barn, go into someone's house and see the same Pottery Barn chair that you have in your house. You want it to
Right.
be different. Same thing with color.
And I have to say that when it comes to the color computer and the color tinting machine, RepcoLite was one of the first companies in the country to use them.
Oh, really?
Really?
We were on the cutting edge of that stuff because we were small enough that we could afford to buy 1 or 2 or 3 machines.
Okay.
We didn't have to supply 1,000 machines to the 1,000 stores. So we could just do a small amount of machines. So we were one of the first ones to use color matching computers and the color tinting machine.
Do you remember, were they good were...
No, they were not real good.
For one thing, you had to develop.
Sometimes they're still not.
You had to develop a database,
Yeah.
which was a
Agonizing.
agonizing task, right? But we, like I said, we were one of the first ones to use them, and it was a good advertising tool, and it was helpful.
It really speeds up the process.
Speeds
That's what
it
it
up a lot.
did. It took it
Yeah.
from being, we would have a customer leave a match for us for a couple days to, wait 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we'll have it.
Okay, so now we have a lot of different products at RepcoLite. lots of different products. The wall paint, the exterior paint, industrial paint, epoxy, a huge range. How on earth did you come up with so many different products? Like, what is the development process for all of these products?
Well, yeah, I guess that it depends on the product, right? And it depends on the customer. A lot of the architectural paints, those are the paints that we use in a building. They've evolved over time. I mean, we pretty much know what the customer needs are there. And so those products were developed early on, of course, and we've always had a complete line of those kind of things. And there's been improvements over time as technology permits and customer tastes change. Sheen levels, for example. I think when I started in the mid-'80s, it would be flat or semi-gloss. There wasn't 5 sheens in between there.
Right.
So some of that stuff is driven by customer demand on the architectural side, and it's a slow development process. Other times we'll have a customer come to us that's in an unusual situation. They don't have access to a product that fits the needs of their particular situation. And now I'm switching gears a little, talking more about an OEM industrial application, somebody that's using our product on their product. And oftentimes there we look at the challenges. What has been your experience so far? What hasn't worked with the things that you've done? And how can we, address those shortcomings? We have an advantage of being able to do that on a very custom, small-scale basis, where most large manufacturers wouldn't even entertain the possibility of doing something custom for a single customer. Sometimes product development is driven by a new raw material that's available. There'll be something novel and unique, innovative that's out there in the marketplace, and we'll think, well, how can we take advantage of this technology and improve our product?
Some of my favorite people were raw material salesmen.
I always thought I was one of your favorite people.
Well, that's okay.
But other people
You
were
may
wrong.
continue to believe that.
Yes, you may continue to believe that. You may continue to live in La La Land. That's fine.
That's right. I like
But
it there.
I was always eager to talk to these guys, because anytime they had something new, it would stimulate what your thinking was about what products you were going to be able to make, And you couldn't take advantage of all of it, but like Dan says, a lot of it was driven by the advent of new raw materials coming into the marketplace. And I think that we always were willing to jump on the latest thing. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Right. But just having that freedom, being the company that we are, the small company, but we've got access to all of this stuff and people who know what they're doing.
We have the access to the same stuff that the big companies have.
But the willingness.
Because these raw material companies want to sell to everybody.
Right.
So, and it's just a matter of, hey, we're going to use this. We can make something out of this. This is going to be good for our customers.
I will say it has surprised me. I've been with the company a very short time, but I ask, I have this customer who wants, this thing that I've never heard of. And somebody, 9 times out of 10, says, oh, we have this special product that we made for so-and-so. And my jaw just drops. Like, you have something for that? Because it's not, working for previously a company that bought stuff from, other places. You only have access to so much stuff. But here, it seems like the possibilities are absolutely limitless. It's incredible to me.
Yeah, really, we're limited by our own knowledge and access to technology. That's about it, And if we don't know something, we can learn about it. We've done that many times,
Right.
Well, we embarked recently on a process of determining what's the safest, best way to make an antimicrobial coating. And we talked to numerous different vendors and talked to them about their approach, learn a whole lot, and next thing you know, we've got a viable product.
That's just incredible to me.
Innovation is exciting. I mean, you can stand still, but then you're going to go backwards. But if you can innovate and continue to keep up with things, that's exciting. And I think that's one of the secrets of this company. One of the secrets, there are many others, is that we have been nimble enough, and especially over the last 8 to 10 years with the recession and everything, Dan has been nimble enough in order to keep things going with some innovation and that sort of thing, so that the company could continue to grow and continue to prosper during a time when lots of companies were having a difficult time.
I would think over the years as well, one of the things that's been a sort of a keystone of development and product development and stuff like that is the size of our company. Being as small as it is allowed us to introduce products that a big company might have to delay a year or two or whatever to continue to develop and make sure it's absolutely, every T is crossed and every I is dotted, where we can find a partner and say, are you willing to try this? Give this a try. Do you like it? Give us some feedback back and forth. We can put a product out there in a matter of a couple months based on some sort of new technology that might be out there. A big player, it might take 2 years. We're so closely tied to the customer that it makes it much easier to quickly bring those things to market.
Underlying all of this is people. You can't forget that. That underlying all of this, the technology and all that kind of stuff, is the people that make it go. And that's been a tremendous blessing for this company, is people like you two guys and others that are committed, that have the knowledge and the passion to do these sorts of things. That's really what underlies all of this. It couldn't happen without that.
Right. Well, I was going to say
it couldn't happen if it was just a paycheck that was out there.
Right.
Right.
Just recently, we've got a customer who contacted me through the website. They've got a new product they're producing and they need to paint it. Mm-hmm. So we arranged they're going to get us some samples, and they dropped them off with one of the guys in the office here out in Grand Rapids. And so he starts putting paint on, trying to figure out what product will work best for this particular situation. It's raising the grains, and there's all kinds of issues. And he's kind of at a loss, and he happens to walk by Tom, our sales manager, who's been in the company for close to 30 years,
yeah,
right?
I'd say 30.
Walks past his office. Tom asks him what he's doing, shows him, and instantly Tom's got, well, there's this product that we created for this situation over here that I bet. So Tom's knowledge, just the knowledge that so many people have. I mean, the store, if we would add up the years' experience of the people in the store, there's a lot of years of experience. I think we go back to the Revolution times.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking shortly after the
Garden
Ark.
of Eden.
Yeah, the flood. I was going to say
Shortly
the
after the
flood.
Ark hit dry ground.
So there's just so much experience, and that's been, so rewarding. Starting when I started, about 18 years ago or so, I had, zero. My experience with paint was Mom decorated the back entry every other week. We'd come home and it's a new color. It just kept getting narrower and narrower.
Right.
Because you guys were so dirty.
And we were new color all the time. It was just the running joke, but I didn't have much experience. But I get here, and I remember the very first week I was working, the manager that I was working with, Ed, had emergency appendectomy, so he's gone. So I'm in charge. And I was making phone calls. I got the people that I could get a hold of that I would think, this problem just happened in the store. How am I going to even describe this to the guy on the phone? I'm going to just have to try. I get 3 words out of my mouth, and he says, is it doing this, this, and this? Yes. Do this. And it worked. Just the experience was amazing.
I remember when I started working in the store, I remember the point when a customer came in and asked me an oddball question and that I've heard before. The first time that happened was 2 years after I started working. And I don't remember what the oddball question was, but I knew I had the answer. I knew now, but it took 2 years to get there, just to get that sort of base knowledge down. Yeah.
There's a lot to learn in this business.
Oh,
a lot.
I tell you.
Well, just look around. Look at everything that's painted. How many things that have paint on them? It's crazy. And different substrates, different environments. It's unbelievable breadth of knowledge that you have to have, really.
But that's why when you've got a company full of so many people that have been here so long and have seen so many things, the answer's there. Whether you've seen it or not, it's just a matter of a phone call or
you
walk
can
over here.
deduce the answer.
Exactly.
Out of your
Troubleshooting.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so I know that we have a lot of employees that stay forever. So we are a lucky paint company, I think, because there are a lot that can't hold employees. So we have a lot of knowledge out there. How are we different than all those other paint companies? We have more knowledge than most places all put together. Plus, we have so many products and we do so much stuff. You know, we're not just a paint company who sells you the paint. We make the paint. How are we different? And are there any other paint companies that are like us, with employees that stay as long and do all of the things that we do?
I don't know. I don't work for, but I would say that, you know, we've always maintained a strong focus on the customer, and employees that work at RepcoLite need to understand that the importance of that project to the customer. You know, empathy is so critical. It's not a job. It's something that you really have to be passionate about and really, you know, care about your customers. And that's been something that we've worked really hard at, and it's a part of our culture, I guess I would say. Whether that is the reason why people stay a long time, I would like to think that we attract the people that are really committed to this business. You know, that's the people we have working for us.
The people are key. There's just no doubt about it. And we've been really blessed with really, really fine people.
So so Betsy was starting to get at this point, but how many companies do you think are like us? And I don't mean necessarily people-wise. I mean, we make paint, you know, and then we sell it. We're a smaller manufacturer. Are there a lot of us out there, or is it pretty much dominated by the bigger places, the bigger manufacturers?
Yeah, it's increasing. There's unbelievable amount of consolidation in our industry. It has been going on for 20 years. When I started in the business, I remember our industry group, the painting coatings industry, the American Coatings Association, would put out an annual top 100 list, the 100 largest paint companies in the United States, North America. And I would look at the list, and they would have annual sales on there, and we were like 102 or 106. We would never make the list. We were just right off the list. But anyway, when I started, it was about maybe 400 or 500 companies in the mid 80s. Fewer than 100 today. Now the ACA puts out an annual publication, top 25 companies, and they're all the giant players that people recognize. Right. There's a few regionals like us around that are doing fine, but it's increasingly a rare situation. It's becoming more and more difficult to compete against the giants in the industry.
And the not only the manufacturing part of it, but the actual going to market part of it has changed and consolidated a whole lot too. There used to be, I think in Holland, there probably with 4 or 5 paint stores. Independent paint stores owned by families, you know. Basically, we're the only ones left. And it's all been taken by what we call the big box companies. That consolidation has come with the big home improvement stores and some of the other big box stores. So the going to market thing has changed a lot as well. But I believe, I firmly believe that experience us once, and I don't think you'll go back to the big boxes, because you'll get something that you will never get there.
I agree with you, because I've had people come into the store, and it's back to Dan's points of making a difference in someone's day. I cannot count the number of people who've been other places, you know, other paint stores, big box stores, whatever, and they're so frustrated. I have this problem, you know, and we're not talking about our coatings, we're talking about somebody else's coatings, but when you give them the answer, their eyes light up. Well, why didn't they tell me that? And there's just this look of relief, and they say, you know, I'm never going anywhere else again. I'm coming back to you guys because you gave me the answer. You helped me out. The rest just took my money, and that was the end. So I think we do give them something that makes people come back.
And they're not paying a high price for it.
No.
That's, I think, something that gets misunderstood. You know, the idea is that let's say we are. Let's say we're $3, $4, $5 or dollars more a gallon. You know, I love to make this argument because if you're talking homeowners, you know, contractors, we can work pricing. There's all kinds of, you know, we got to talk to a salesperson. There's things we can do. Homeowners, they get this idea that, okay, well, it's $4 more a gallon. And necessarily, that's not even necessarily true. But let's just, for the sake of the argument, say that's true. Let's say it's $8 more a gallon. An average job, you're doing a room, it takes a couple gallons. So now you're going to save $16 total dollars. You know, if you really, you know, again, we're exaggerating how much the difference is. $16 total dollars to get something that's not going to last as long, not going to cover as well, not going to wash up as well. All of these things, you're not going to get service that's for $16. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right, for the cost of a pizza.
And there's a perception out there that big is cheap. That's wrong.
Right.
Those people, the big stores have the same. They have tremendous overhead. They have margins they've got to make, and so it's just one thing that's a perception that.
Yeah,
is
the
out
taller
there.
the ceiling, the prices aren't necessarily lower.
No, right, exactly.
You know, another thing I would mention about, you know, contractors and pricing is that it's often helpful to look at the total project. Is this going to save labor? If it costs a couple more bucks a gallon and it saves labor, I'm saving money. And this is some of the things that we can make a contractor aware of, or an industrial user.
Right.
You know, so it's not all the cost of that can.
Right.
There's a lot of other things that come into it that means that you could be saving money at the end, even though you're paying more for that can at the beginning.
Our podcast that we just had about the floor grinder, we brought up that point because it looks like a lot when you look at, you know, the cost to rent the machine and all that stuff. But then Dan broke it down and said, but you have this much in, you know, a remover, you have this much in the brightener afterwards, you have this much for a power washer. And in the end, you spend more doing it the other way, and you have way more time into it than
Right.
if you just rented the grinder. So, you know, it's this misconception that people have. They don't necessarily break it down.
Yeah.
Not only that, but your shopping time is
Yeah.
cut way down
Yep.
by dealing with a locally smaller company. I mean, you walk in and you walk out. You're done in
Right.
10 minutes.
Yep.
Try that in one of these stores that you got to stand in line for 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Takes me 10
15
minutes to get to the parts, and
That's
then I have to
exactly
stop
right.
in the middle because I get winded.
Yeah.
Unless there's
And
one
then,
of those
and then you
carts
found
that I
out
can
that you're
ride
on the
on.
wrong way.
Well, the wrong way.
So you ride on those lumber carts?
Well, if I'm tired.
Do your kids push you?
If I'm tired.
That doesn't surprise me.
And you know, another part of it is the research before you purchase. Now, some people get their jollies out of finding out the difference between two different primers. And maybe they want to spend their evening figuring that out.
You don't? mean,
I
that's-
have already got it figured out, so I'm not a good.
I'm still trying.
But you know, this isn't for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. If you want to relieve yourself of all that effort of trying to figure out what all these myriad of products are out there, go talk to an expert. You're not going to find them at a big box store, though.
But what you are going to find there is a myriad of products that are very confusing.
Yeah,
Right.
Row after row of stuff that you don't have the faintest idea what it is.
or why you would choose one thing over something else.
Exactly.
And so you know, some people choose to do that research and enjoy it. Other people would just as soon have somebody else have done that for them, and they can just walk in and walk up to the counter and say, "Here's my situation. What do you recommend?" And you'll get the best recommendation right out of the gate.
Okay, so we're talking about, you know, we're the experts. We can help with all of these things. We manufacture our own products. But how would you rate the quality? You know, people, they know Benjamin Moore, or at least they assume they know Benjamin Moore quality. They know or assume they know Sherwin-Williams quality. All these different national brands. Then they hear RepcoLite. Where do we fall, or where would you rate us quality-wise?
I always felt if I couldn't make it as good or better than the other guy, I wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
Now, that's at a price point, okay? So if the price point is $10 a gallon, I'm going to be better than the other guy at $10 a gallon. If it's $20 a gallon, I'm going to be better than the other guy at $20 a gallon. You do the same thing yet?
Yeah, no, that's definitely, you know, I think that the word that comes up most often is value. You know, what's the quality like compared to the price? And I think that's something we've always excelled at, is bringing the best value to the table. Every company makes good products, but like Dave said, at a price point. You know, there's, for interior, for example, some companies may have 5 or 6 different product lines to fit each price point. It's a little difficult for us because you just don't have that ability to make that many things. But we want to make sure that the customer has a good experience, and the experience is generally not about price. It's, you know, it's not. So we'd much rather make something a little better than cheaper.
But even then, like we were saying earlier, the price generally comes out very comparable.
Oh yeah.
it's
No,
not
in
like
fact,
this is-
we can save people money almost always.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about the paint business is it's easy to make garbage. Water is cheap, and it's easy to make garbage. And I'm not accusing anybody of doing that.
You're looking at me when you say
Yeah,
that.
I know.
Okay.
And in the past, there has been garbage out there, and you just can't play that game. You just cannot play that game because your reputation just dives down into the depths. You've got to maintain your quality, particularly as a small company, because you live by your reputation.
See, a lot of people, though, I think the struggle is it's paint. What is it? What more could there be? My mom.
A can of oil is a can of oil, right?
My mom did this. I worked at RepcoLite, and she still would go, I love you, Mom, but you're very cheap and frugal. We'll just say frugal. But she would go and buy all this other products. It's just what she would do. She didn't want to, she never even priced it out. She was just figure I'm going to get cheaper or more inexpensive at Lowe's. She did probably about she still talks about this. This had to have happened about 5 years ago. My sister needed to paint cupboards or something at her house. They got Hallmark because I don't know why, but finally she was going to buy this. She called 4 different times that day. 4 different times to keep telling me she's never used anything like it. It almost got annoying because the phone's ringing again. It's Mom. She was so completely shocked because she figured paint was paint. So whatever she was using, why pay anything more? Like I said, in her head, she assumed it was more. But when she got it, tremendous difference. So when people realize that, again, it's back to everything, the value, the time that you're saving, it covers better. All of these different things, there really is a difference.
So much more than price. So much more than price.
Well, and I will say, coming from, someplace that sold Benjamin Moore, when I first got here, everything I learned was equated to what I knew about Benjamin Moore products, because those I knew. So RepcoLite products, okay, well, this is like Benjamin Moore's, X paint, and this is like Benjamin Moore's Y paint, and, I would put a little bit out to see how they compare so I could tell customers, we have a lot of loyal Benjamin Moore people out there, who, I'm coming in here to purchase Benjamin Moore. But a lot of times you can say, well, gee, we have our own product. Why don't you give it a try? It's like this one that you've always used, but, you can save money by buying our product because we make it right in the back there. And, we don't have to buy it from somebody and then resell it to you. So sometimes if you're, really open to it, you actually have an advantage because you're buying our paint and it's actually a little bit cheaper, but just as good as the national brand.
Right. In some cases, I would even say better. One of our philosophies when it comes to exterior painting is we only make one quality, and that's the best we can possibly make. A lot of other companies out there are making, again, 3 or 4 different tiers of exterior quality paint. And when I see someone painting the outside of their home, I think, you want to do that again in 2 years? I'm going to guess you probably don't. Why would you use anything other than the best thing you can put on there? The price difference is going to be, $50.
Right.
Total.
You have to look at it at cost per year. That's the way you really have to look at it,
All right, looking back, as we get to the end of this, what are things you're most proud of that we've accomplished over 70 different years instead of 70 of the same, 70 years? What are you most proud of?
Well, for me, proud, I'm not sure that's the right word. What I'm happiest about, I think, was the people that I worked with.
You're looking at me again.
Yeah, I'm looking at you. I'll look at Betsy from now on, okay?
Thank you.
I mean, starting with back in those days with Don Plasman and Frederick Skure and a lot of Javen Fossen, a lot of those guys that were in on the foundation of this thing.
Sure.
They were wonderful and just really, really first-class people. And then as we progressed and got bigger, there were more people added. Store managers like John Boomsma, Ed Meisty, Randy Van Leer, all these guys who helped us get off the ground with new stores and that sort of thing. Always been a joy to meet. There were times, obviously there were times when it was very difficult, when I had to let somebody go or fire somebody or something like that. But by and large, working with these people was always a joy. Mary Hussink, what a sweetheart she was, That to me was the biggest blessing. And of course, there was a lot of other things that went along with it. It provided us with a very good living, and it provided a lot of people with a good living.
How many people are employed here?
76 currently, and I would say that
How
that's
many are you counting twice?
yeah, 5 of those
Dan?
are part-timers. But I'd say that's for me the thing I'm most proud about is the fact that we're able to support and improve the lives of 70-some families. That to me is the most important part. It's nice when you get compliments about your products but that's really what that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps me going.
I can't tell you how often now since I've been retired, people will say, "Oh yeah, I go to RepcoLite all the time. Your people are just great." They don't say much about the product, but they just say, "Your people are just great," and that's why they go. And that's something I guess to be proud of, right? I guess we can use that word here. It takes a lot of things that come together, but you can edit this out if you want to.
I'm muting you right now. So
Okay, that's a good thing to do. Basically, it comes down to God's blessing. You can say, what are you proud of? What are you? But I was never smart enough to put together the situation that allowed this company to prosper. It's always been a combination of things that I would have never thought about. So it basically, God has blessed richly, and that's where the thanks has got to go to the first time around. But after that, it's got to go to the people.
Of course, we wouldn't be here without the customers, and it's something that we're extremely appreciative that we have been allowed to operate in this environment where we have communities that we serve that have people that really appreciate what we can bring to the table. We've had customers, it hasn't been that long even, the last time we had somebody come in and want to write a check to Reselman. A name that hasn't existed for, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That used to happen all the time.
So, so really, we owe it all to the customers, and we thank them from the bottom of our hearts for 70 years of success.
And I'm going to get personal here for a minute. You can't believe how much it means for a dad to see his son succeed and build on what he modestly started.
Right.
My dad felt the same way. My dad was a little bit hard on me when we were working together, and I think I was hard.
I was coddled.
No, I don't think he was. I think he was hard. But from the day he retired, my dad never stops being my cheerleader. And I hope that Dan realizes how much of a cheerleader I am for him, because you can't imagine how proud you can be and how happy you are that things have continued. Mm-hmm. This is unusual. Mm-hmm. 3 generations. Now, this is a small business, but 3 generations of success. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest about it. It has been 3 generations of success. It hasn't been 3 generations of multi-billion-dollar business, but it has been 3 generations of success, and he's carrying that on. And I'm just so happy and so proud of that. That you can edit out, but I had to say it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, looking ahead then, we want to talk about the future. I can't see it, so I'm going to yield the mic. What do you want to talk about? What do you see coming up?
Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about our business in general. Since the housing recession of 2008, we had to really carefully evaluate our business. The majority of what we had sold prior to that was paint for new construction, new homes. Mm-hmm. And that just completely dried up to nothing. And so we have nothing left. What do? We just started going out and talking to industry, finding companies that are using paint on their product, and just scratched and clawed and dragged ourselves to a point where prior to 2008, about 70% of what we sold was architectural coatings. Currently, about 55 to 60% of what we sell is industrial coatings. So that was a big shift that we made in the course of less than 10 years. It was it was by necessity. It wasn't by choice. I mean, it was deliberate, but it had to happen. And in that same period of time is when the big box stores really kind of took off from in the consumer's front of mind, and the paint store became a specialty thing. So what I see the future for us is maybe more of a progression along those lines, although we'll always be in all these markets. We'll be talking to do-it-yourselfers, we'll be talking to industrial customers, and everything in between. But I think that our business will be less and less focused on retail, just by necessity, and more will be happening behind the scenes that most of our customers won't see when they walk into our stores. Different products, different needs, different approach, different way to selling, but it's
not
still
really
paint.
changing. We're not going to.
We're not turning our back on anything.
They won't notice a difference, but behind the scenes, that's just
right.
what
The
we'll
growth
notice.
in this company will be less evident, and so anyway, I think that in general, that's the nature of what we'll see. We'll continue to stay deeply involved in paint retailing, because another thing is I think we're pretty good at it, and I don't want to quit doing something we're good at. Technology, who knows? Who knows what tomorrow brings? Some revolutionary new material could change our business substantially. Where I sit right now, I don't see that happening immediately, but I've been surprised before.
And that's all there's time for today. Again, we're grateful to Dan and Dave for taking a couple hours last week to sit with us in a relatively hot and stifling little studio.
Relatively?
It was insanely hot and stifling to talk about RepcoLite and the paint industry in general.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you have a better understanding of why we are so proud to work for RepcoLite with its rich heritage and customer focus.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, or if you'd like to suggest a topic for us to cover in a future episode, you can reach Betsy and I at colormehome@repcolite.com. That's colormehome@repcolite.com.
And remember, our show notes for this episode, as well as links to all of our past shows, are available at repcolite.com. Just click the Color Me Home link on the homepage and then subscribe to our podcast via RSS feed or on iTunes. Subscribe today and you'll never miss another episode. Until next time,
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Color Me Home, brought to you by RepcoLite Paints. Everything discussed in this episode can be found in our show notes at RepcoLite.com. Just click the Color Me Home tab on the home page. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can contact Betsy and Dan by email. The address is colormehome@repcolite.com. That's colormehome@repcolite.com.